Hey YouTube, it's Leto Armitage. I'm back with some reviews. I had originally planned to give some summer reading reviews from my bedside table that was frankly filled with a bunch of depressing nonfiction. So I've backed up a little bit and said, you know what, it'd be healthy for me to have some lighthearted reading. So I went out and found it, and I'm going to share it with you. My first one is this. This is Insects, Volume 1. There's a Volume 2 out now. Also, this is from Aftershock Press. This is by Marguerite Bennett with art by Ariella Cristantina. A couple of different colorers, but they remain very consistent. The art in this is absolutely lush and gorgeous. Here, let me show you a little bit of it. This is beautiful. Now, I am going to tell you up front, this is also a horror title. I'm going to skim here just a minute to find some of the sample art. Here we go. Woo. We're going to go through that quickly so that YouTube doesn't take my channel down. Sexy, sensual, sultry. These are appropriate adjectives for describing the art. Yes, there is a heavy sapphic element. There is a heavy element about women in a men-dominated society. It is Victorian London. Now, some people will say that that is anachronistic. However, the first women's rights conference, International Women's Rights Conference, was held in the 1880s. Yes, the suffrage movement wasn't at full swing at the time, but its seeds were then. Does that mean there aren't anachronistic elements? Of course there are, and there are supernatural elements. It is essentially Victorian urban fantasy, with body horror, by the way. It is pretty grotesque in parts. It is not a title about hating men. It is written by women, it is from a female-centric point of view, but it is about where they have suffered, not from a standpoint of being anti-men. If somebody reads it that way, they're missing the point. It is also just a wonderful, fun adventure story. I can't wait for Volume 2. I have it on my bedside table, and I look forward to reading it. The next title is this one. Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. If you're not familiar with John Scalzi, he's a science fiction writer. He's very accessible. He's very easy to read. And this is a great entry point if you're not familiar with his writing, because he writes a lot of series, and this is one of his few standalone works. This is about an alternate dimension. Our protagonist needs a job. He gets one in this alternate dimension where kaiju, if you're not familiar with the term kaiju, it's a Japanese term that means monstrous and huge. If you want to think of what is a kaiju, think Godzilla. He goes to this alternate dimension, and these kaiju are endangered species. Now, of course, there are bad guys involved, and the kaiju end up in our world. It's a fun adventure story. I highly recommend it. It's great for sitting around on a lazy day, sitting around on the beach, having a good read with a drink in your hand. Absolutely. Now, my third one I don't have, so I'm going to have to electronically put the cover up here. Like many of you, I read stuff electronically. I purchased this on Amazon. It is from W.M. McLeod. Now, a disclaimer, she is a friend of mine, but she's a phenomenal writer. And if you are a fan of urban fantasy, if you have just gorged yourself at this point on Jim Butcher, and we won't talk about his last book, and how the Dresden Files probably needs to be wrapped up at this point, and Faith Hunter and writers like that, then this is right up your alley. However, instead of putting urban fantasy right here in contemporary late 20th or early 21st century, she pulls back the clock a little bit and takes us to the Roaring '20s, the age of Prohibition in upstate New York, where, of course, booze has to be run. Now, where does the paranormal come in? Is it vampires? Is it werewolves? No. We get the Fae. The Fae in all their glory and all their incredible diversity. And the Fae have this society that stresses social climbing and ladders. It is it is all the backstabbing politics of Renaissance Italy with fairies. And of course, the accumulation of status and power comes with money. And what brings you more money in Prohibition than running booze? So I'm really looking forward to more stories with these characters. in this setting. I'm looking forward to the expansion of the supernatural world. I highly recommend checking out Speakeasy Times. You can grab it on Amazon, and I will have a link for it in the description below. Thanks.